We're considering some assumptions and presuppositions that we bring to the interpretation process. We already talked about the assumptions and presuppositions of the Bible. Let's consider the assumptions and presuppositions about us as students of the Bible. And can I suggest just two here? The first is the idea that in many ways we assume that students of the Bible are literate. Now that may sound just, kind of like a no-brainer, but if you think about it, prior to Moses, all of God's revelation took place simply face to face. It was with Moses that, in a sense, all the rules of revelation changed because Moses was the first to write or to record revelation, and in that sense, it became much more concrete. It became a way that we could study it and refer to it and quote it. So Moses, in a sense, changed all the rules. Joshua in Joshua chapter 1 was reminded of that when God instructs him to go back and to read all that Moses commanded. Even Nehemiah, in a classic text like Nehemiah 8:8, he dealt with the idea that once the revelation of God was written, and people no longer spoke the language of Hebrew because of the exile, they spoke Aramaic, that they had to go back, and in Nehemiah 8:8 it says that they needed to translate to give the sense so that the people could understand the meaning of the text. And so that's really what we do in hermeneutics. We translate to give the understanding and so that we can have a sense of what God is saying to us. And so we have to understand that one of our assumptions is we have to be literate people. We have to know how to read. The second assumption or presupposition is that in some ways we're already experts at this process. And I simply base that on the idea that we're already literate, and many times we read in such a way that we don't even understand what we're doing. Take the newspaper, for example. When we read the newspaper, we are well aware of the concepts of genre. We know that we read comics different than we read classifieds, different than we read editorials and advertisements. We expect a different use of language on the front page than perhaps the sports page. We just understand these kinds of things. We do it in communication all the time when a parent or an authority figure said something and we didn't want to necessarily do exactly what they said. We would press the letter of their words as opposed to the spirit of their words. And so the same thing is true when we come to Scripture. We have to understand issues of genre. We have to understand the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. All of these things we bring to the text. It's our assumptions and presuppositions, and in some ways all we're doing in the interpretation process is naming what we already do, giving it a vocabulary so that we understand the process of communication.